Welkom bij Dipsaus, de podcast voor vrouw van kleur, door vrouw van kleur en iedereen die geïnteresseerd is in een ander geluid. En dit is een bonusaflevering. Hallo, Mariam hier en guess who's back? We hebben even een korte seizoenstop gehad, maar we hebben zeker niet stilgezeten. Jullie hebben vast wel het boek Hallo Witte Mensen gezien van Anousha Nzume, uitgegeven door onze EBC van AUP. En verder gaan we ook meteen beginnen met goed nieuws, want seizoen 2 van de Dipsaus podcast gaat op 28 mei weer beginnen. Dus schrijf je in voor die nieuwsbrief, check ons op Instagram, Twitter en Facebook voor het laatste nieuws. En dan zien jullie ook meteen wie daar te gast is. So let's start de bonusaflevering. So the rest of this episode is going to be in English because this bonus episode is with Dr. Amina Wadud. She's a black Muslim woman calling upon all Muslims around the world to reinterpret Islam and the Quran. She lives in the United States and she specializes on gender and Quranic studies. She delivers the khutbah, which are the Friday sermons in Islam, which has caused a lot of controversy and a lot of heartache at Muslim men. So she came and visited us in the Netherlands to lead a prayer and do a lecture on Islam, gender, and women. So what you're going to listen to is a small group of Muslim women at the Moroccan Women's Organization for Moroccans in the Netherlands. It was an intimate dinner because Amina really wanted to talk to Muslim women in the Netherlands and hear about their experiences in a Dutch context. So you're going to hear a little bit of that dinner, and also you're going to hear a short part of her lecture in Paradiso in Amsterdam. So enjoy.
Every patriarchal shit.
And I was just like, what? That was the one thing that was positive about having a period. Mm-hmm. So I'll be giving a little introduction and context to every part that you listen to of Dr. Amina's conversation and lecture. So this is about the month of Ramadan. So the month of Ramadan is coming closer. When you'll be listening to this, it will be in less than a week. And we were talking about how women are not allowed to fast during the month because of their period. So the blood flow. So a woman should be drinking and eating for health reasons. But a woman is not allowed to pray or hold the Quran for some. But those are not health reasons. So shouldn't we revisit these restrictions on women? These restrictions come from back in the days when you didn't have tampons, when you didn't have the pads or cups, and there was really a blood flow. So women couldn't really control their blood in the spaces. But shouldn't we revisit these kind of restrictions and apply them to the modern times we live in now? So that's what the conversation here is about.
Not only a natural but also a necessary part in order for us to procreate the way it stands now, right? So why do we, I do believe, not all of these ideas are completely formulated in my head. As I said, I'm working on some research now about sexual diversity and human dignity. The idea that to know that there's some representation specific to the female body because she is eating or drinking in Ramadan, and then to have that be a bad thing or then taboo. We really have to unpack how it becomes a taboo, because it is a reality. I don't know, there are a lot of Muslim families, you raise your kids and, no sex outside of marriage, so you almost do not have a conversation, and then they want to get married. And it's supposed to be natural and loving and, it's like you're supposed to turn this thing on and turn it off. That doesn't even fit what's happening really with the body, So I think we just need to deconstruct some of that taboo element that goes with it to go ahead and be embodied. I don't know, I'm sure you've seen some of those projects that come out. I think the first one that I saw came from India about the menstrual pad and the blood on the pants and I mean the thing is that we keep marking that as if something is wrong with that, and there are true logistics. Like I believe that the reason why it was that certain taboos came with regard to the whole menstrual cycle, the menstrual blood, and all of that are a mixture of a number of things, but the possibility that before they had all these modern forms of protection, you could literally leak anywhere. So the ability to be able to, and I'm old enough to remember, because I know that my mom did it. I grew up in the age where we had products that were sold in the store, but they literally would be on the rag, where they would actually take rags. And I remember being in Egypt in 1982, and Egyptians, like many Muslim cultures, they love to invite you, and they love to invite you in Ramadan, and they love for you to come early. And it's funny, as a female guest, I would be put to bed to take a nap, and all the females in the house would be preparing the food, and only ones napping in the house would be the men. So it was like really interesting. But I went once when I was having my period, and I remember a woman actually came and brought me a piece of rag. Like, well, you need this, and I just thought it was 1982, So the thing is that if we now we have all these fancy forms of protection, including protection that keeps you from having a menstrual flow, which for some people, if you're not having a flow, then that means that there's no restriction on you praying. So I never got through having a period and getting to the place where I could feel like I could use an interior form of protection, and therefore I was too old. I'm menopausal, it's gone, So I never really got to the place where I kind of examined within myself, how I would feel about it, because I didn't ever like the internal protection, even from young. No. I just didn't like tampons So I kind of missed the sort of the metaphysics, the spirituality, the religiosity. I missed being able to sort of embody that experience, because it came as I was older, But there are a lot of things that we need to think about in terms of reclaiming it and then repurifying it, because that same place from which that blood comes is the place where life comes, unless you have a cesarean. Absolutely. And a cesarean is an invasion, because the body is not producing according to quote unquote the natural path. So mostly all of us come from there. How does that spot get marked with so much taboo and negative, ritual? And I don't mean that I'm not. Mona El-Tahawi is a really good friend of mine, and her whole book, that we need a sexual revolution, presumes that in my mind, the sexual revolution is like the sexual revolution of the West, and I think we need a higher level of awareness about sex and sexuality, and that it will help us with looking at issues of sexual identities, because you can't look at non-gender conforming persons unless you have begun to understand something about what is happening in your body when you start thinking about sexuality. Muslim countries have the highest rates of pornography.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like we are not fixing the problem.
Yeah.
Well, the same with rape, because people say when you cover up, then the man doesn't get seduced or something like that. All those men they think that's the reason why we should cover up, but
it doesn't prevent rape.
No.
And we just need to kind of flood the waves, but. It's hard, because
it would be interesting to know how it developed that way, like in history, and if there's records. Although I know that there are cultures that celebrate when a girl gets her period. So
can I let you listen to the spoken word of which one? I am on Twitter, and almost every month when I have my period, I post
The period poem.
The period poem.
Oh,
Do you know the period poem? Do you know?
Yeah. Is it the one where she says when her daughter got her period, she gave like a red party?
Her,
I was like, I want to.
No, they used to do that. They used to do that in Morocco. Like when the girl would get her period, they would dress her up as a bride.
So wow.
Yeah, but they still do it sometimes.
Okay.
I know I know a few people, Moroccan people that I know from a certain region. When the girl had her period, there was a big party, and I was like, yes, let's go. What do I bring?
Do you know which region?
It was south. Yeah, it was a little bit south.
Oh my God, it's 4 hours. Maybe I should get up. Just the whole how do we? That's what made me think that in the time of the Prophet, when they had certain taboos with regard to the mosque or the prayer rug or the Quran, even that they had those because who had control over those products? There were no products.
Yeah, definitely.
And now they've got all this new stuff. They've got the cup. They've gone back. They've got the cup. They've got cloth pads, so you don't do stuff with the environment and everything.
Even in a piece of underwear, I think these days.
Yeah.
So we just have to make it in such a way that if you don't bring it out of the closet, you're not going to be able to facilitate it, and then we're going to have daughters, we're going to have nieces, and we want to have that, or even I know with my daughter she's done the
actually it's part of it's part of the fact that I'm pregnant now is because I got the period in the first place.
Exactly. It's beautiful, actually.
Exactly.
Not to have the challenges be trying to meet someone else's assertion of a standard, because then that person is in between you and God. And we don't know how to. I've tried to work with 5 children. I tried to teach them to have a relationship with God and not have a relationship with everybody's interpretation and everybody's sort of cultural way of doing it, because all of these are endless, and that's the beauty of it, right? But if you are working consciously in terms of your relationship with Allah, you are going to challenge yourself, and you are going to hold yourself accountable for certain things, and you are going to try to improve on yourself. So let that be the standard. But then what you do with your hair, or for example, I have it's a lot of work, So I do know what is involved in terms of it for me. And I know what I have to do in order to be able to both satisfy the challenge in terms of my, Islamicity, and the challenge in terms of my particular attempt to try to have dreadlocks. But I don't communicate that as like a public standard. Like everybody has to do it like this. No.
I think when I have these conflicts, and when I think, I'm detaching myself from the how it's supposed to be, and I always think of what Islam actually, what God has told, me or us, is that He wants al-usr with yusra, that I want ease for you, not hardship.
That was what we talked about.
When I'm faced with the conflict, and I am busy and I'm tired and I can't do something, which maybe people can do, but me at that moment, my mentally I cannot do it. I think then why do I feel exactly what you said? Then if it's a person that is stopping me, or conscience, or whatever, or my family, or that idea, then that is standing between me and my connection to my Creator. So if I decide for myself, well, if God wants ease for me, why do I make it so difficult for myself?
I didn't.
So we're going to continue here talking about male biases within Islam, because we're talking here about when, in Christianity, the idea is that God created man in His image. But in Islam, you don't really have that. So where does that leave the woman's body? When in Islam, usually when you have a rule, a female body has a different rule. So is the exception. So what does that do to the experience of women in Islam? And by the way, if you hear cats, those are not cats in your garden or balcony or your cats fighting. They are just 2 Amsterdam cats being really in love and flirting.
Okay, so technically in Islam, we don't have this idea that we are created in the image of God. Now, some of the Sufis, especially like Ibn Arabi, they did kind of put a new meaning to it and all of that. But if you were to give a bodily form to our images of God and to our images of, of what is a Muslim, we are often more located into the male body. And in order to bring the female body in, then we have to bring in, the moon cycle, and we have to bring in pregnancy and nursing, and we have to re-infuse those kinds of images. And for me, as I said, this is part of the research I'm doing now, there are so many lovely, like every surah except for one begins with Ar-Rahman and Rahim, which the root form is Rahim, which is the womb, you know. So in a way, there is this female embodiment of God if you look at the Jamal attributes. But we have emphasized throughout our intellectual history more of the Jalal attributes and more of the male attributes. And whenever there is an exception to a rule, it is because the ruling is so male biased that then we become the exception. We can't be the exception and have that direct and
because the default is always male.
The default is always male. And even when it doesn't make sense, like everybody should follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but don't do that because you're a woman. It's like either we're following it or we're not. And the ways in which we are not is because we are embodied in this female body. And because that has been so silent, or it's been made a utility of male usage and benefit. So I've also been doing things with, women in the Quran who did not have children, and the men wanted, to be able to pass their legacy on, like the Sarah Hagar Hajar story, that body becomes an instrument of the fulfillment of his desire to have a sort of a mini-me, a little version, of himself. And
of course the ego, so it can live on.
And we need to be able to kind of like unpack those stories to see that those stories are an affirmation of the male body, and there's no way in which the female body, created by Allah to be just what it is and to do just what it does, that body has to be, as we know, silenced, hidden, and so metaphorically, we just kind of need to examine the ways in which we have not had that affirmation of our body. And, just this whole story about, you can't fast, but you can't make it public that you're not fasting. That's so strange. It's like a paradox.
It is.
We actually,
I think this, within Moroccan society, there's like this huge inside, outside, or male, female. So within females, it's okay. But that's never the public.
So this part I love, where Amina is talking about organizing and mobilization and the importance that every group is represented. She says the more, the merrier. The importance of pluriformity, and that people of color are not all one group.
So like from the white Dutch perspective, it's always like, okay, put the colored people together, put the allochtone is like word here, put them all together, they all want the same thing. So I think it's also that influences why also there's also only one that you can go to. Because
it's sort of like the white mainstream is allowed to have diversity. But then if you're any of the subaltern, then you can only have one identity, and that's not true. You see. And sometimes you have to, when Sisters in Islam started, we were already networking internationally with women from the Middle East, from the MENA region, and women from South Asia. And literally, one of the first things that we had to say is, what's going on here is not true about Southeast Asian Islam, Southeast Asian Muslim women. We need our own. And for a long time, people just wouldn't buy it, And we just didn't wait for permission from them, because we start off as a volunteer organization. And that means however much energy and resources people want to put in, that is time and money. How do you do fundraisers in order you can have other types of events? We had to do it. We didn't wait for permission. And then once we've done it, and you look back, and now we're more than 25 years old, it also led to the formation of Musawa as a global network. So my experience with that has been, it's kind of funny, it's kind of mixed, because as I said, that my most of my contribution is literally international, And sometimes when I'm at home, all I do is see my children, do the laundry from the last trip, and then pack up for the next trip, So I don't have an organizational base in the U.S. I've never had an organizational base in the U.S. But it's not because there are not, burgeoning organizations. It's just that once I'm spread so thin internationally, once I go back home, I'm just exhausted, But what I do in terms of observing is to see that, people come together based on the imperatives that they experience. But to understand that you have complete agency to do that because of being in civil societies that are, quasi-democratic, you may have to explain it to people, right? So if you have a Muslim student association on campus and it's homophobic, why can't you start a Muslim queer organization on that same campus? Because they said, well, you already have a Muslim student association, but that association is the one that is the most negative for our being able to explore our sexual identities in the context of our Islam. Then then go to the queer Muslim, the queer student group, and then they're very secular, very anti-Islam. And so literally you are at a crossroads, and at that crossroads you should build something. Even if you continue to grow, and there are new crossroads that come from it. That's okay. We just,
But it's the case, what you told before, like it's black and white. Yeah. Here it's, or you are Muslim and you wear hijab and you think you should pray 5 times a day and you don't eat pork. And like that's the whole thing. And if you are out of that box or it doesn't fit in the Dutch idea of being a Muslim, then they automatically don't accept you and you have to explain, and that's annoying and tiring, and because there's one way of Islam in the Netherlands, and if it's not that way, then it's if you say progressive, they use it against you because then you hate your own kind, and so it's very difficult to build organizations, also with media intervening and politicians intervening with you always have people. Everyone has a political agenda. Literally everyone. So if you apply for certain, with lesbianas we applied with the
Muslim pillar.
In the United States, African Americans who are Muslim form the single largest Muslim ethnic population, and yet we are the least represented. And you just have to keep on plugging away at it. First, because we are only like 22-23% of the Muslim population, but every other group is less than that, like 20, 21, 16, whatever percent, right? Until you get 100% of Muslims, right? So although we are the single largest, the fact that we get disenfranchised by the other groups, and then by non-Muslims with regard to Muslims, because Islam is supposed to be foreign.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You just have to keep working at it until you see, first of all, again, what I said, what were the challenges, what are the needs, how do you address those? And then how do you communicate to people in various places, because each of them will need a different kind of discourse, but how do you communicate to them the right and legitimacy to be able to articulate yourself in this way? It's this is basically the story of my life.
And here Dr. Amina is talking about the environment and how we all should be really worried about the state of our planet Earth.
In fact, we talked about some of these things, and I just thought it would be a good thing for me to share, because the places in the north where Muslims are a minority are riddled with a certain level of tacit bigotry that allows not only the citizens, but also the governments to continually reinstill these very narrow definitions of Islam, which really isn't benefiting anybody, not even the patriarchal men who claim that they're benefiting from it. Because not only are we the leaders that we are looking for, we are now at a very precious precipice with regard to the salvation of the planet Earth. I'm going to ignore the guy in the White House with regard to climate change because clearly he doesn't know. But the reality is the world is changing at such a rapid pace that unless and until we all come to take responsibility for how we treat each other and the planet, none of us going to survive. I believe that literally. So I think that it is time for us to come to terms with how do we negotiate with diversity within our own citizenry. And that means, first of all, that we do have to listen to other people. We do have to respect their stories. And we do have to allow for people to struggle with the manifestations of their own realities, whatever context they are in, which is what I learned from Musawa. Musawa does not go into a country and say, this is what you should do. Instead, Musawa goes in and we make consultation about what is happening on the ground, and we equip them again with this sort of Islamic interpretive methodology, and then we go back again to their circumstance and we allow things to play back and forth between the interpretation and their lived reality. So in the context of the lived reality of Muslim minorities, right now, I think I read statistics yesterday, 80% of the refugees in the world are Muslim. As a consequence, that means that the population of Muslims is no longer static within any particular national boundaries.
So I hope you guys really enjoyed this bonus episode of Amina. We had so much more audio of her, but these were the things that we really wanted to share with you. The last thing you're gonna hear is about creating space for the future, but also raising back our parents. And I hope you enjoyed it. And our next episode is on May 28th, but it's gonna be in Dutch again. It was nice for all the international people to stop by at the Dipsaus podcast. Watch this space because, we have sporadically English episodes. Bye-bye.
I think pretty much, well, not everybody, you didn't give any taboos. So everybody gave something about the taboo, even if they didn't go at length. So in other words, we all, I mean, my first 20 years, I wasn't even Muslim. And yet I was raised with certain taboos, right? So pretty much we were impacted by those taboos. And so unpacking them, and that's why I said, we will have daughters, we will have nieces. Yeah. We want to create spaces for the future. And I didn't say we just want to throw out these individuals. We want the individuals to be brought up in nurturing environments with regard to the holism of their bodies and every aspect of the body as it grows, so that they will understand and they will love themselves, and then they will not be as vulnerable to these arbitrary isms that are out there. And practices. They will not gravitate towards men who will replicate that as a characteristic of your loving them. If you loved me, you wouldn't go 40 kilometers. What? So we're interconnected. For the good and the bad, we are connected to other people. So we are also part of creating. So we want to be able to... But
not only in the future, but also now, because I really believe in raising your parents back thing, especially with these kind of things.
Yeah.
When I walk in the house with my pad or my tampon
I do miss Ebise and Anusha. I'm sitting here alone in my room talking to my phone for this episode. Where is everyone? Hello?